everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan, and today we're going to continue with our How to LS Swap Something series. I'm really excited to continue this series. Basically, we have this one, the wiring episode, and it should be ready to run. We are so close to showing you every single nut and bolt, every single wire, every single thing you need to put an LS into something. I'm trying to keep this guide as general as possible so it can help as many people as possible. Our car happens to be a 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air, but this guide also applies to pretty much anything American that is front engine, rear drive. This guide is going to apply to you. So what are we doing today? Today we're going to be putting on our intake. That's going to include, our air filter, our intake tube, mass airflow sensor onto our intake manifold, and we're also going to mount the battery. And I know those two things don't sound that significant, but this is a really important stage that you want to get just right. So I've mounted my battery in my trunk. It's kind of a cool old school hot rodder trick where you put the battery in the rear and it helps with weight transfer and you don't have so much clutter in the engine bay. It's a little bit more work, but I think it's really worth it, and it's going to make the install look really slick. So I encourage people to put their batteries in their trunks, but if you want to leave your battery in the stock position, that's totally cool. It makes it a lot easier, especially if you already have the stock wiring and it's still usable. You can just go ahead and reuse it. But I wanted to cover all my bases just in case you want to put your battery in the trunk or the wiring's not really salvageable. This is how you're going to start to build the foundation to wire your car. We're going to get to wiring in the next episode, but for now, I'm going to show you exactly how to mount that battery and put your intake on. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and thank our amazing sponsor, Summit Racing. Summit Racing has been an incredible sponsor. They've sent me all kinds of awesome parts. This series probably wouldn't be happening without them. They have an amazing selection, incredible customer service, and best of all, easy returns when you don't get something quite right. So make sure you buy all your speed parts from summitracing.com. With all that out of the way, let's jump in. So let's go ahead and talk about our air intake. How are we going to accomplish that? So on our 92 millimeter throttle body, that's nearly kind of 3.5 inches. You might see I have a 4-inch in diameter intake tube. But I've measured it, and the ID's not quite 4 inches. It's like 3.78 inches or so. And they're accounting for its deflection, how well it can bend and stuff. So I think what we can do is squeeze this down to fit on our throttle body, and it'll work just fine because I actually have the 3.5 and it is too small. So I have this sent over by our friends at Summit Racing, and the part number is down below. So this is for your 4-incher. You might want to double check yours and measure everything. And that's kind of the artistry, and this is like some of the fun part of doing an engine swap is you get to decide how you want your intake to look. I'm just going to go for a simple elbow, mass airflow sensor, and then an air filter and call it a day. But you can do whatever crazy, awesome looking thing you want. I encourage it. In fact, I want to see it. Send me a picture, Ryan at twocarpros.com. I want to see what your engine swap looks like. Then I also have our mass airflow sensor. This is just a regular standard one you'd get for like an 02 Silverado or something, and that's going to be bespoke to whatever wiring harness you have, so you want to double check that bad boy. Some regular hose clamps, again, link in the description, and then our Summit, aftermarket kind of fun racing air filter, and this thing looks really neat. And it has adjustable sizes, so you can go all the way from, I think this is 3.25 to 3.5 to 4-inch. And check that out! Doesn't that look cool? Oh, it's gonna look so good with our red motif and everything. It is gonna look really neat. So let's go ahead and get started building it. So here is our throttle body, and here's our intake tube, and if you put it on, you can kind of see that it's almost okay, but not quite. You really don't want it touching anything. You could run it like this if you really wanted to, but I don't think it's gonna look very snazzy. So what you can do is just cut some off of it. It's just silicone. So you can kind of feel where the end of the throttle body is, but I think it's gonna need like 1.5, 2 inches off. And you can, of course, test fit it a bunch before you, cut too much off. So I'm thinking I want it about there. But don't cut too much off because you have to cut it on a straight piece. You can't cut it on an angle or it'll never ever fit and you'll have a leak. So just make sure you cut on the straight, not on the curve, and you should be good to go. So I actually ended up taking a little bit more off than I originally planned because I did a couple trial fits, and I think this is really the best look for me. It's nice and far away because you have to take in account for the diameter of the air filter. So we have that. I got my fancy hose clamp here. Slide that down onto our throttle body housing. And we're going to do our best to keep that straight and behind the barb of the throttle body while we tighten it down. Oops, there we go. And check that out. That's not coming off, so I think we're good. So here is our mass airflow sensor out of that box. I already put one of the adapters from the air filter, because I don't really need it for the air filter, on this side of the mass airflow sensor. It might be a little tough to see, but the silver bit is actually quite a bit bigger in diameter than the black plastic bit. And just pay attention to which way it says flow on it. It usually will say flow in a direction to put it on. That's what's cool about these ones that are kind of built into their own housing. And we are going to do our best to just kind of force that into its home, whichever clock we want, wherever we want the connector for the mass airflow sensor to clock. I kind of want it back towards and away so it looks a lot more slick. So we can just kind of force that in its home. Oh, yeah, like that. Then we can just grab a hose clamp and tighten it down. So let's put our hose clamp into position and take it apart in order to get it over the rest of the mass airflow sensor, but they're easy enough to put back together. We're just going to make sure that is in its position right about there. Looks pretty good. And we can just snug that down. Doesn't need to be crazy Hulk tight or crushing it any. That is nice. So now the star of our show, our Summit branded performance air filter, and I can go over there. It's a little loose, but that's okay. And I have our hose clamps lined up. Can't quite see that one, but that's all right. And then we can tighten that down like that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So here's what our finished product looks like. Check it out. Our intake is all set up. We got our nice 90-degree bend kind of up and away. Make sure it's not hitting any of the serpentine belt, any of the pulleys, anything like that. Anything that moves or gets hot. It is plenty distance away from anything like that. We have our mass airflow sensor clocked in such a way that it'll look really slick, and it looks great with all our Summit branded stuff with the red and black. I think that just looks amazing. And again, yours might look a little different. That is up to you to decide how you want to route it and how you want to secure it, but for our money, this looks great. So let's go ahead and talk about breathers. On the LS, typically on the valve covers, there is a breather on the left and a breather on the right. So we're gonna focus on the driver's breather today, and instead of trying to duct that tube into the intake, which you can do, I'm not gonna do that though. I'm going to run my very own little breather. This is actually for a Harley Davidson motorcycle that I just kind of found on Amazon, and I think it'll work great with a 3/8 to 3/8 male connectors. So we can just put that in. So we can just tighten down a hose clamp on here. Check that out. And then I just have maybe 3.5 inches of 3/8 vacuum line I just had lying around. Put our hose clamp on. Put that on. Make sure they're all facing the right direction, the same direction. I think it looks snazzy. Tighten that down. Grab our other hose clamp. Get that ready. And now we can head over to the car. So here is our external breather setup. Think old school muscle car. And then we can just, I'm gonna feed it, I'm gonna do under the throttle cable. I think that'll look a lot nicer. And we're going to just push it onto its home. Grab our hose clamp, put it into position. Actually, I'm going to rotate the assembly so they all can line up and look nice. Yeah, like that. Yeah, all right. Make sure it's behind the barb on the valve cover. And just tighten it down. Make sure it doesn't come off, which it's not. And look at that, external breather, and it looks really trick. So now we're on the passenger side for the PCV tube, and we can just remove the caps on our valve cover here. There we go. And then we can just remove the one off the throttle body. That came off nice and easy. And then I have already cut about a foot long worth of 3/8 hose, and I cut it a little bit longer than you might expect. And the reason I'm doing that is I want it to kind of S around the injector here, so that way they don't kind of interfere with each other. I think that will look really nice. So put your hose clamps on, don't forget that. Route that into position, and you can just kind of twist it, and it'll kind of keep that memory of the twist differentiation, and you'll have this nice S-curve. Tighten that down. That way. Yeah. Well, there we go. The PCV tube is all hooked up, and check that out. We have this nice S, so that way our injector can still be plugged in, and I think it's gonna look really good. So now we're gonna talk about battery trays. So our 55 Bel Air does not have its battery in the stock location. I'm actually gonna put it in the trunk. It's kind of a cool hot roddy thing to do. Helps with weight transfer, and honestly, it's what all the cool people were doing back in the day, so we're gonna do that today as well, and I'll show you exactly how to mount and route everything to it. So the first thing you're gonna need is some sort of battery hold down bracket, and I have this one sent over by our friends at Summit Racing, SUM-430017, and the link is down below in the description. It should be a billet aluminum battery tray. Oh, look at that. It looks so fancy. This should be everything you need to mount it into the trunk or wherever on your car. You can also use this in a marine application, RV application, anywhere you need to put a battery. So this is the actual hold down itself. Kind of cool, has the Summit Racing logo. If you didn't want that logo, you can just flip it over and have plain black, but I like the logo. I think it looks neat. So that's what's actually gonna go on top of the battery and hold it down. This is your base. Here are some spacers. If you wanna use these, depending on your battery height, you can use these or not. It's gonna be a little bit situational for that. And then the actual all thread that is going to thread into here and hold the battery to the bracket. And of course our bolt holes that we're going to interface with our Bel Air. So here we have our trunk. I've already cleaned it all out. And I've been kind of scouting where I want to put the battery itself. Now, on my Camaro, I put it right over here, but obviously I can't really do that because there's a spare tire in the way, and I think that'd be really cluttered. And besides, when you leave the line, your car kind of wants to do this anyway, so to help kind of counteract that, it's good to put the weight of the battery on the driver's side. So that's something to think about. And this is just something you want to consider: aesthetics, convenience, all the rest of it. Also, never put it like here, for instance, because you'd be right over the gas tank, and you obviously don't want to drill into that. So I've already marked out here, right about there is going to be absolutely perfect, and I've already looked underneath and made sure that I can see where the bolt heads or nuts are going to be. It's a straight shot down, there's nothing in the way, and I'm going to be able to bolt it up nice. So the next thing I'm going to do is grab my marker, and then right in the middle of each bolt hole, I'm just going to put a dot. That looks pretty good. Go ahead and take the tray away, and yep, all the dots are there. Perfect. Alrighty, so I have my center punch right here, and on all 4 golden dots, I'm just going to go ahead and give a nice little divot. This will give us something for our pilot drill bit to sit in, so it doesn't jump around on us. Okay, making double sure, triple sure, quadruple sure you're not drilling into your gas tank, go ahead and drill your pilot holes. And then I have my nice step bit here, and I'm going to go to 3/8 on that because our bolts that I have are 3/8, so hopefully that'll be a nice snug fit. And there we go, that looks absolutely excellent. And look at that, all 4 holes nice and drilled, and they're going to work perfectly for us. So that is excellent, and since our trunk actually came with a nice mat, I can go ahead and grab that and put it on here, and then the battery tray will act like it's kind of sitting on the mat. It'll look really snazzy. Alrighty, so I have my mat in, or if you want, you could use carpet, anything you're going to line the trunk with. This is a good idea to install it now, because trust me, the battery's sitting on material, it looks like $1,000,000. So I have a helper down beneath, and he's going to start poking through. Just be careful about where you put your hands, because you want to make sure you can poke through that, but not, you know, go into you. There we go. So there's that one right there. That is absolutely perfect, because we're going to come back later and enlarging that hole, but I just need to know where they are. So we can go to the passenger front now. Perfect. Now we can do driver front. Oh yeah. And then driver rear. And there we go. All four are nice and poked through. Now I can get my step bit and enlarge in those holes. So, a little difficult to see on camera, but I can see them. So we're just gonna cut that. Oh, wow, that looks really nice. We're just gonna step bit those. See how nice this step bit cuts through rubber? I think it's not even there. Look at that. Yeah, that's gonna look awesome. So now we can grab our battery tray, put it where it's gonna be, and this is the important bit on orientation. You could change this later and flip it around if you like, but I noticed on the top bit, the Summit logo reads like this, and I want the Summit logo to read right, because I think it would look a little weird if it read upside down, so I want it to read right side up. So I just have the two bolts facing the rear of the vehicle. Just line those up. I have some 3/8 bolts I just had laying around with washers. So we can just put those in their homes, and then once we're underneath it, we can go ahead and bolt those up. Put that through, and then we can put the nuts and the washer on the back side. So I've got the nuts and washers and nuts on the back of these bolts, and I'm just going to go ahead and tighten them. I have a helper holding them down. And we're just going to go in a cross pattern here. Doesn't need to be whole crazy tight, just, you know, snug. And check that out, fully installed. Look how nice that is. So I've got my battery in place. I have this Duralast unit. You might be wondering why I'm using that, because it's free, and the battery that's free is the one for me. And I've already drilled a hole here for our battery terminal cables, and basically you just want to make sure you're not drilling in anything that is, you know, the outside skin of the car, into the gas tank, fuel lines, brake lines, that sort of thing. It's a good idea to look around when you're doing that. I happen to notice that the inside trunk skin is separate from the outside car skin on this particular car, and that's going to vary on your application. So I've already drilled out a hole for my chassis punch, but don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. I just want to make sure I had the height just right. So you can see it's going to come off the cable here, or probably positive for this one, and go straight in there, and it's not going to dip or anything like that. It's going to look really snazzy, and that's half of racing is looking good. So just like before, grab my center punch, put it on the gold dot I already marked out at the height of my terminal cables. And then I have my chassis punch here, and I notice that the stud for it is 3/8, which is the 4th step on my bit here, so I just have to drill until I get to number 4. Just like that, like absolute magic. So let me clue you in on this cool tool. This is an old school tool. It's actually my grandfather's, and it's called a chassis punch. And what this does is create big holes in sheet metal. Alternatively, if you had a very large step bit, you could just go ahead and use that and go to, I don't know, maybe 3/4 inch, something like that, 7/8. Depends on how big a diameter you want to run cable-wise. But this one is a 7/8 chassis punch. I will leave a link down below in the description of these bad boys, and they're available around on Amazon. They're not like a special, unique, rare tool or anything. So basically, you have 2 parts. Well, 3 if you count the bolt here. And this part goes on either side, doesn't really matter. So you can take this bit off, feed it through, and as you feed it through, this bit is on the other side. And as you tighten this, these 2 pieces will come together with extreme force, and it'll actually cut this metal, and you'll get a nice big hole. Check it out, it's really cool. So I'm gonna put my threads through there, and then I'm going to thread it onto the back side. And I'm just gonna keep spinning that till it's nice and tight like it is. Usually when you get it nice and snug like that, you don't even need to hold the back because it's going to be gripping into metal. I have a 1/2 inch wrench. The newer ones I think have a hex bolt on there, so you can just use the box end, or you can use the close end of the wrench here, and we can just give this a few turns, and you'll see it just kind of plunk into my hands. Oh yeah. Oh, We're getting there. We're almost there. Keep going. Yeah. And check that out. I have a nice big clean hole in sheet metal that I'm going to be able to put a little grommet into, and then my battery cable can just run right through there and it'll look mint. I'm just going to go ahead and do that for this one as well. So this is what our final product looks like. All it needs is a little rubber around the brim here, because you don't want, you put your wire in here and then it kind of seesaws like this, and then it has a chance of cutting into it and grounding out your battery, which would be no good. So go ahead and put some sort of insulation between the battery cable and the sheet metal. Alrighty, now we can heave-ho our battery in. Excellent. And then we can put our all thread down into its home. There's one in the front and two in the back for me. Grab some channel lock, just gonna snug that up a little bit. Doesn't need to be super Hulk tight, just snug. Be fine on a spot on the all thread that you're not gonna thread anything on. All right, all our all threads are installed. Now we can grab our top plate. So the next thing we can do is install our jam nuts, since we can't put these on. If our battery is just a little too tall, it's not going to work out for us. If your battery's too tall, go ahead and just do what I'm doing. If you have the right height battery, you can use those spacers. So what you want to do is just put them down enough so you can get the bracket on. There we go. We can grab our Summit Racing bracket. Looks amazing. Look at that. And we can place that onto its home. And then we can grab our other nuts here and start those. And what we want to do is we're just going to get these, and be careful not to gap your battery, is we just want to get these a little snug, not like bending it or anything. You just want them so the thing's not going to move. That seems pretty good. And then we're going to grab our jam nuts, bring those up, hold the nut, and then tighten our jam nut like this. So now that's nice and locked in place without crushing the battery. You don't need to crush the battery. There we go. So the jam nut is actually pinching this piece of metal while, you have a little bit of clamping force down. And we can double check that by trying to move the battery around. Well, that battery is in place. That's not going anywhere. So this is what our finished product looks like. Our battery is installed. I told you it would look excellent sitting on top of this mat, which it does. Also, when you're installing this, you want to make sure that your battery terminals aren't going to come in contact with like the trunk lid if you had like a really shallow trunk or something. Basically anything that moves, and you might think that this is going to hit the trunk lid, and don't worry, I took into account of that when we were doing it, so go ahead and check that before you start drilling holes. But I can assure you that the trunk closes and there is no interference. This thing's all done. So that's how to mount your battery. That is how to put your intake on your engine. This is really coming down to it. We essentially have one more episode before we get to hear this bad boy run. I am just on pins and needles. I am so excited to see this thing run. To be this far into a project, this many hours and toil, it's going to be electrifying to get this thing running, and I really hope you're subscribed so you don't miss out on it. If this video has helped you at all, please consider giving it a like. Thank you, Summit Racing, for sponsoring this series. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.